Good morning. Thank you for having me here. Today I would like to talk to you about new directions in aphasia rehabilitation. Namely, in this brief lecture, I will begin by outlining some of the main characteristics of aphasia, highlighting the relation between micro and macro linguistic processing. I will later shift on rehabilitative issues, namely focusing on the positive effects of an intensive training coupled with the development of new technologies like virtual reality approaches and the use of techniques like TDCS, so the TDCS approach. First of all, let's begin about discussing the characteristics of aphasia. As you all know, aphasia is an acquired language disorder that may occur in people suffering from stroke, mostly left hemisphere stroke, but also right hemisphere stroke can lead to aphasic symptoms, traumatic brain injury, or other causes, for example, neurodegenerative diseases such as in primary progressive aphasia, for example. Persons with aphasia do have microlinguistic impairments, that is to say lexical, phonological, morphological, grammatical impairments. Even if the symptomatology can be very heterogeneous depending on the severity of the lesion, severity of the syndrome, and affected linguistic modalities, with issues focusing mostly with productive skills and or comprehension skills and or repetition skills, writing, reading, and so on. One important thing that has emerged very clearly over the past 20 years is that microlinguistic issues do have effects on macrolinguistic issues, macrolinguistic processing, where macrolinguistic processing refers to the ability to generate a discourse, to be pragmatically correct while interacting communicatively with someone else. As to this regard, I would like to share with you the results of a study we conducted together with Andrea a few years ago in 2015. In this study, we recruited two groups of people, one group of patients with aphasia and one group of healthy control individuals. The two groups have been were matched for a number of demographic and cognitive variables, and the time after injury for the aphasic group was quite wide as a range, spanning from 6 months, one person, to 96 months, another person in the group. In this study, these people were asked to perform cognitive, linguistic, and narrative discourse tasks. In the latter, in the narrative discourse task, these people were asked to describe what was going on in a story depicted in images. And in these speech samples had been transcribed and then analyzed. As for productivity levels of these two groups of people, the aphasic people did not produce a significantly different number of words, but they did produce their speech samples with reduced speech rates and reduced mean length of utterance. Also, from a lexical point of view, they did produce more phonological errors and semantic errors. Here you see percentages with respect to all the words produced by these individuals in the two groups. Moreover, they had also grammatical issues. Indeed, the persons with aphasia in the study produced fewer complete sentences. 30% of their utterances were grammatically complete sentences, whereas the healthy control individuals did produce approximately 75% of utterances that were grammatically complete. The aphasics also produced more substitution of function words, more omissions of both function words and content words. So all in all, they had they were fluent people with massive problems at the macrolinguistic level. The point is that they had also issues at the macrolinguistic level processing. Indeed, they produce more errors of cohesion, more errors of local coherence and global coherence, and they produce significantly fewer lexical information units. So fewer words that were really informative in their speech samples. But the nice thing here is that, as you can see here, some microlinguistic issues were related to the macrolinguistic issues. For example, the percentage of complete sentences was negatively and moderately correlated to the errors of cohesions. And the percentage of lexical informativeness, so of words that were really informative in their speech samples, was negatively correlated, this time very strongly negatively correlated to their production of global coherence errors, mostly filler utterances and repetitive utterances. Now let's turn to rehabilitative issues that are the focus of this talk. From this point of view, a massive amount of data over the past 20, 30 years suggests that an intensive training has very important effects on linguistic rehabilitation. I would like to share with you the results of a study we conducted a few years ago. It was published in Brain and Language in 2016. And in this study, we described a single case, the case of Alex. Alex is a guy who was born in Romania, who came to Italy when he was 7 years old together with his family. Since 7 years old on, he was exposed to Italian. He was scholarized in Italy. He completed the education cycle and found a job. Unfortunately, when he was 23, he was involved in a car accident. And after this accident, he received a very severe traumatic brain injury that created a massive problem in his brain. Indeed, as you can see here, the CT scan made on the day of the accident, you can see there is the beginning of an increasing in his left lateral ventricle that becomes massive in a few months in 2009. But you can see here this MRI scan in 2013. You can see that the left lateral ventricle dilated in a huge way, covering almost all the left hemisphere. Coherently with this picture, Alex was global aphasic, very severe global aphasic in both languages, both Italian and Romanian. That said, he was enrolled in already in 2012 in a very massive, intensive training program that lasted 4 years, twice a week, 5 hours a week. Over this period, he was trained with conversational therapies, traditional logopedic therapies, and so on. And he recovered very well both languages. Today is a mild aphasics in Italian, that was the target language of rehabilitation, and even Romanian, that was not the target language of the rehabilitation. Here you can see the result of an fMRI scan on a verb generation task, where he was listening to words, nouns in Italian and or Romanian, and he was asked to generate the verbs in the corresponding languages. And in both cases, he had a very good performance, and he had a cluster of activation in the right middle temporal gyrus. That said, unfortunately, national health systems have limited economic resources, and not all patients can afford the cost to have access to the private healthcare system services. This means that too many patients do not have the possibility to receive the recommended amount of training. This is why, to overcome such limitations, we need to develop innovative methods that overcome such problems to enhance the efficacy of the rehabilitation process. In this direction, I will just discuss two examples of such innovations: the virtual reality approach and the transcranial direct current stimulation, TDCS approach. The former virtual reality approach is a quite new approach. We are really at the early stages of the development of VR applications for the rehabilitation of language in aphasia. I will just discuss with you a study, a very recent one, conducted here in Italy in 2020. In this study, 36 people with chronic aphasia received a conversational training twice a week for 6 months for a total of 48 sessions. These people were divided into two groups, a VR group who underwent conversational therapy during everyday life setting, and in VR environments, and a control group of aphasics who received conventional setting without VR support. Interestingly, as you can see here, the group of people of the VR group gained much more, received much more, recovered much better than the control group. Indeed, the control group, after the training, had a significant increase in repetition skills. However, the VR group had significant increase not only in repetition skills, but also in written language and in oral comprehension. So this means that the VR approach can be very effective in enhancing the effects of a rehabilitation procedure. Indeed, the use of virtual everyday context enhances the ecological validity of treatment protocols, and the semi-immersive interaction encourages language practice in real communication settings, not only because the inclusion of a virtual therapist does not require the presence of a clinician, allowing the patient to practice at any time, every time he likes, at home. And these applications, if delivered at home, can be used for several hours a day, leading to an intensive treatment that does not affect the costs of a national health system, reducing furthermore the perceived loneliness and social isolation of the patient. Now let's come to the second technology, the TDCS approach. As you may know, this approach is a non-invasive technique that allows to let's say, to modulate the cortical excitability of the brain of the patients. We know that TDCS can be a very good asset in developing language skills and recovering language abilities in these patients. I will briefly discuss the result of a study where we used the TDCS over the left inferior frontal gyrus to enhance lexical informativeness. A few years ago, together with colleagues here in Italy, we began uncovering and unveiling the system or a neural network dedicated to the ability to select lexical informative words that are appropriate from a semantic, morphological, grammatical, but also from a discursive and pragmatic point of view to speak in a specific discourse. We found out on a group of schizophrenia patients, and later on a group of healthy individuals, but also in other groups, like, for example, MCI people, people with mild cognitive impairment leading to Alzheimer's disease, that there is an epicenter in the left hemisphere, the gyrus, you can see it highlighted here, that is involved in such ability to produce lexical informative words. Knowing this, we set out a few years ago a therapy, an experiment. We recruited 12 non-fluent chronic aphasics who had not received any significant benefit from traditional rehabilitation procedures. These people were enrolled in a conversational therapy treatment that lasted in total 3 weeks with intervals of 1 month between each other. The people included in the study were all people with the left hemisphere lesions, mostly encompassing the left inferior frontal gyrus, but extending also to portions of the superior temporal gyrus in the left hemisphere. You can see here a lesion map analysis of the group. These people were exposed to 6 short video clips that we had developed depicting everyday situations. 3 of these short video clips were used to elicit descriptions during treatment. The remaining 3 ones were presenting all at the beginning and the end of the therapy. Each therapy session lasted 10 days. So let's begin with a specific patient. Let's say patient 1. Patient 1 came to the hospital. On the first day, he received a complete assessment. And from the first day to the 10th day of this first session, he received 40 minutes of conversational therapy plus another 20 minutes of TDCS over, for example, the left inferior frontal gyrus, let's say Broca's area, for 20 minutes with 1 milliampere of electrical power. On the second day, on the third day, on the fourth day, on the 5th day, and so on, you receive the same kind of approach. After the 10th day, he was completely, again, analyzed. His linguistic skills, cognitive skills were completely assessed. And for a month, this specific patient was left at home. On the second session, after 1 month, he came back to the hospital. On the first day, he received a complete assessment. For 10 days, he received 40 minutes conversational therapy plus 20 minutes of description of the stories with TDCS over, for example, Wernicke's area. And on the 10th day, he received again a throughout assessment, 1 month at home. Again, for the third session, 10 days. On the first day, complete assessment. On the 10th day, complete assessment. In this specific patient, in this example, over these 10 days, received 40 minutes of conversational therapy plus 20 minutes of sham stimulation. So he was not stimulated at all, but he was left believing that he was stimulating. It was underground stimulation. Interestingly, obviously, these conditions were rotated across patients. So 1 patient received sham plus Broca plus Wernicke. Another patient received Broca, sham, Wernicke, or Wernicke, Broca, sham, and so on. Here you see the result of this treatment. After the 3 treatments, at T10 in white, in respect to T1 in black, you can see there is a gaining in all 3 conditions. However, the gaining was significant at T10 of Broca's condition. When we were actually with anodic stimulation exciting this portion of Broca's their left hemisphere, they produced more C units means content units, let's say informative words after the stimulation with respect to the 10 days of sham or Wernicke stimulation. But as in language, everything is bound together. This more production, enhanced production of lexical informative words was linked to the production of a higher percentage of verbs. And this allowed us, with respect to sham and Wernicke in Broca's area, to find out more, to understand more easily the linguistic structure, the grammatical structures of their sentences. Okay, all in all, I hope I could show you some of the most interesting new approaches in the field of aphasia rehabilitation. Obviously, there are also other approaches like pharmacological ones. I didn't have the time to discuss here. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and again, thank you for having me here.